we're going to go on a journey today. It'll be really exciting. When I get stuck into AI, what I always like to talk about is actually layers. And it's been a long time since the invention of the internet. It's been 35 years or so. But when we take a step back and we start to look at what the internet is, it's actually a series of layers that have built on top of each other that have progressively built more and more value and created more and more industries. When we go back 100 years and we think about the automobile was an amazing piece of technology, but what did it do, right? It allowed us to travel from cities to rural areas, which created the holiday industry, which created petrol stations, which created large transport, which created logistics, which created, those Chico rolls and how they get to those petrol stations way out in Canberra. So these layers that we've been creating over the past 25 years have progressively brought more and more value. But when we think back to the internet, and again, I've made some kind of presentation subtleties here with, there's obviously the security layer, there's a DNS layer, but when the internet was first invented, we had to have a way of actually visualizing this network that was created out of universities. So the first layer was the browser layer that was created. Well, that all well and good, but how do people start to find my website now that they can type it in and view it via a GUI, right? A graphical universal interface. Well, that was a search layer. And two people in a garage in Palo Alto in their first year of revenue made $285,000. Fast forward 25 years, Google has produced the most profit of any company in the history of mankind. On top of that, you have the mobile layer, you have the social layer, and now the mobile layer, that device created the health and wellness industry. It created mapping. It created an amazing number of enormous billion-dollar industries. Now, we're about to walk into this new industry, what we call the agentic layer. And Jensen Huang, who has very good style, he's the guy who wears like the lizard jackets all the time. In NVIDIA, one of the first companies to reach $3 trillion or more. I think it's valued at $4 trillion today. Jensen Huang, Jeff Bezos, all the luminaries are saying that this agentic layer will be more commercially impactful and create more value than all of the other layers combined. So if you take a moment and think about that, think about what the smartphone unlocked for us, right? Now think about that as only a fraction of what the agentic layer is going to open up in terms of opportunity for the business. So, but when we think about AI, what we want to do is frame it like, where are we in this AI development lifecycle? So I like to look at it in these kind of 5 stages. If you look at the left here, this is generalist chat. Now, we've all used ChatGPT. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. If there's someone who says no in here, get out right away. Actually, no, come in, right? And let's learn together.
Take photos?
Of course you can. Yeah, you're welcome to. But generalist chat, right? And has anyone put in, when you had your first chat in November of 2000, I was in the beta, so I was a little bit earlier, but when I put it in, I had this remarkable response after my first prompt. And my second prompt was remarkable. And my third prompt was remarkable. My fourth prompt, I was like, there's a bit of a general response. My fifth prompt, I was like, oh, that's maybe incorrect. And my sixth prompt, I was like, that is definitely not right. Right? And thankfully, I was smart enough, and I'm not a lawyer who's put a case into ChatGPT and submitted it to a judge, as some dumb people have done. But the point is like generalist chat, what people don't understand is ChatGPT references 20 trillion tokens, and that these large language models do not understand what you are asking of them. They are purely a probability engine. And that's why NVIDIA is worth $4 trillion. Because all they're doing with each word that you are putting into ChatGPT, it is hitting all 20 trillion tokens. So it is pure horsepower. And all it's doing is saying, what is the probability of the next best word to give you? That's how they work. And so that's why they start to hallucinate, because there's 20 trillion things that it has to look across with every single word. As we move forward, we have expert chat. Now, you would have heard of DeepSeek that came up a few months ago. DeepSeek is kind of just a hack on top of this 20 trillion tokens. So DeepSeek, because it was in China and because it couldn't get the H1000 chips that NVIDIA had because of US sanctions, it had to work with the shittier chips. So what it did was, well, instead of going across 20 trillion tokens, I'm going to look at 3 tokens at a time instead of 1 at a time. And then I'm going to look and say, like, what are those 3 words going to say, right? And if it's questions around medicine, I'm just going to go to the medicine section in the 20 trillion tokens. So it was just hacking, right? Because they had poorer hardware to be able to get to those things. But now you get into expert chat, and expert chat is about, Wordsmith is a great one to write Sonic, which is for the legal industry. So they've made what's called a small language model for the legal industry. It does exactly the same thing. Now we're going into AI agents, and AI agents are everywhere. When you go on YouTube, you will see unlimited numbers of influencers and YouTubers saying you can build an AI agent in 15 minutes or less. I will show you why that is not possible. But this is where the world is today. And AI agents are really interesting because they are task-based agents. So if you give it a specific series of tasks, like book me a flight, and we'll talk about that in a moment, is that they will do that pretty well. You can go outside of the variations slightly, but it'll be able to achieve that. AI agents will disappear within the next 6 months, and they will be replaced by agentic agents. Now, agentic agents are slightly different. Agentic agents, you give them a goal, and they find a way to achieve that goal creatively. So AI agents is book me a flight. Agentic agent is find me a holiday my family will love. Now, what will an agentic agent do? It will go to my Instagram feed. It will look using a large vision model, and it will say, do I like beach holidays or ski holidays? It'll look at my job title on LinkedIn. It'll reference that against a salary database to see how much I can afford, which as in a startup is not much. But the third thing is it may ask me a question, and it may ask me a series of questions to try and achieve that goal. Now, that's the difference between an agentic agent and an AI agent. So the next question is, well, that sounds pretty smart. For some people, that's terrifying. But why aren't there more agentic agents? Well, the reality is agentic agents are very expensive to build. And they're very expensive because they take specialized labor. When you think about most businesses, big or small, the data in those businesses is very messy. It is incomplete, and there's 3 types of data. Structured data, so that's data in a database. Semi-structured data, so that's in Excel. And then unstructured data, so that's imagery or a PDF. And that's the second 2 abound everywhere, right, in the organization. So it's always messy, and it's not centralized. And what people also don't recognize, I had the privilege of working within a company that provided the data and the training for most of the AI on this planet without hyperbole. We had 75% market share. I got to work on GPT-5, Alexa, you name it, I got to work on it. I had senior citizens doing somersaults because a senior citizen does a somersault differently than an 18-year-old for your health tracking. Right? I did that all over the world. I had language, et cetera, et cetera. But what most people don't know is that the brilliance of these large language models, large vision models, large geospatial models, large reasoning models, and upcoming, which has not been created yet, which is a large quantitative model, which is a missing link to get to artificial general intelligence, is that they are very, very complicated. How many people have Alexa in their house? Yeah, lots. Yes, yes. It's an amazing piece of technology. Like, regrettably, the only thing we use it is to set timers, right? And maybe play music if you have Spotify linked up. But that's called a text-to-speech model. And I can tell you, because I worked on this, there are 67 submodels that live underneath your Alexa device just for you to set it a timer. I have an amazing Australian accent, born in Canada. I have to set my Alexa to the Canadian region so it understands me because dialects change, right? So actually building large language models and the overarching agentic capability is really expensive because, welcome to your AI builder smorgasbord. You need about if you have 10% of these tools, you're going to be spending about $1 million in labor and subscriptions to start building your agentic tools. Now, on top of that, you have to organize your data and make sense of it. Now, so as the result, because AI and agentic AI is very expensive to build, the only solutions we have today are to get it from our SaaS providers. And that's what's called vertical AI or point solutions. And so Salesforce has Einstein, Atlassian has Rovo, HubSpot has Breeze. Choose your major global SaaS provider and their weirdly named AI agent, and off you go. Now, what does that do for us in the future? Well, it increases our subscription fees. Let's face it, all of the data in these systems, if you have them, is incomplete at best or poor in reality. And what really doesn't make sense, because AI is fundamentally a horizontal technology, because we've all put a prompt in ChatGPT, right? The bigger the prompt, the better result. That's because it's horizontal, or it gives it more context, more probability. Is that, Salesforce Einstein, it may help you write a better email to your top customer, but that top customer, it doesn't know if it's a poor payer because it's not connected to your accounting system. So the future of AI is what's called system native AI or horizontal AI. And that's what Decider is. Decider is the system of record that starts to bring together all your underlying data, and we are an agentic database. You connect your data, and our system starts to structure it and manage it. And when you have, it's a bit of a hyperbole, but perfectly structured data, you can then have agentic apps which sit on top of it, which are intelligent right out of the box. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because today is talking about readiness by businesses in Australia. So let's get into that. And this is the first one that's been done in this country. We're really excited about it. I'm a bit sad because it's taken to 2025 to do the first AI Readiness Index in Australia. It should have been done about 5 years ago, but here we are. I spent a lot of time in the States. I spent a lot of time in Australia. I spent a lot of time everywhere on a plane. And I'd like to say, kind of opening this up, is that our US peers are at least 24 months ahead of us in terms of how they think, how they use AI, and what they're in the productivity and efficiency that they're getting out of it. So I wanted you to keep that in the back of your mind. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about like the readiness of our, my battery's dead here. Oop, here we go. The readiness and the opportunity. AI is about to unlock $15 trillion in global value. Now, our human brains don't understand trillions. I was trying to tell my daughter about a million and a billion and how many seconds that was, and I forget it. So bad luck for us today. But I don't think we're really comprehending the impact that this is going to have when it comes to our economies. If you are implementing AI into your business, your revenue per employee, which is a very important future metric that you should all be thinking about, is going to be 3 times higher than those who do not. Now, that's contrasted by the AI abilities in your organization. They're going to be paid 50% more. You're going to pay a premium. So you've got to hope that your revenue is higher than the wage growth that's coming from this new wage. And so one of the things you want to remember is like it took electricity to 100 years to change the world. The same change is going to happen in 10 years when it comes to artificial intelligence. So again, the acceleration, this is a logarithmic base 10 acceleration that we're moving into when it comes to global GDP growth. And we're just starting it right now. Now, as we start to look underneath the hood into kind of the sovereign capabilities, I always like to look to job postings and look to the early nature of what's happening as a signal, as a leading signal to our economic capabilities as a nation. There's an alarming trend. Now, there's 2 things that we'll talk about today. What we're seeing here is the percentage of job postings relating to AI jobs in the country over the past 6 years, I think. Oh, no, 8 years, I think. Now, AI-specific jobs rose modestly from 2016 to 2024 from 8,000 to 23,000. Now, that only represents 2% of job postings in this country, which is one thing to realize. But over the past 4 years, that has stagnated. So now job boards are a good indicator from the sovereign AI capability of this nation. Now, also what's interesting is that we partner with Career One. That's one of our partners. So they invite us to look into their large data. They see every job in this country. And over the past year, graduate jobs have dropped by over 35%. So what we're starting to see is the elimination of those interns and graduate jobs, likely replaced by AI. And we're seeing the same trend over in the United States. So there's an alarming trend here because there's stagnation in the job market, which points to the capabilities of this nation to be able to produce AI. So there's a real risk that Australia will become an AI consumer and not an AI creator. And we've seen that pass already, right, with SaaS. We have very few successful global SaaS companies. We have a modest venture capital sector. But as compared to our peers in Europe, in China, and in America, we are far behind. So there is a definite risk. And if you think about the speed by which this industry is moving, we have to get moving on it very quickly. As we start to look into the AI readiness, so I'm gonna go through kind of a little bit of a lightning round of the things that some of the highlights, and those are available in the booklets that you have today. And then I'm gonna invite John to come up and John and his team actually conducted the study at arm's length, so we'll be able to go dive a little bit deeper into that, into the data. I'll finish with some elements of the Decider platform, but then we'll go into Q&A after if you have any specific questions. So one of the first things is like, yes, Australians are very excited about AI. We believe as a nation that is going to change us and we're going to have a positive change, but we have no idea how to do it. Yes? 83% of businesses. I find that really interesting. It's like, what about the 17% who don't believe AI is going to have an impact to the business? What industries are they operating in? Maybe they're still on MSN Messenger, who knows? But they have a belief that AI will impact their business in the next 12 months. And in addition to that, kind of contrasted that only less than half believe it's an urgent priority. So how do we reconcile those two things from businesses? Now we'll ask John and go a little bit deeper into the sectors and the cohorts that sit underneath that. But sitting on top of that is AI interest is very, very practical. You know, I've had startups, I have small businesses, I've worked for large businesses. And, you know, the common thread for small businesses is I have to control my costs. And we're seeing that in the data. It is all about efficiency and savings, which I will show you later is that that's missing the point when it comes to artificial intelligence. When you have the capability, agentic capability to find any customer and any prospect at an extremely low cost, that's about productivity. When it can speak 72 languages, when it knows the ingredients of your products better than humans, when it knows the customer better than any human in your organization, that is a missed opportunity. But what we're seeing here is efficiency, faster reporting and insights, and making better decisions with data. I find it really interesting, especially the faster reporting and insights. When in our business, when you have AI doing things, it has high reliability. I don't need to know that it's doing those things. I need to focus on the outcomes. Dashboards are an artifact of humans. Yes, because humans are unreliable. For CRM systems, what do we have? I'm a salesperson, we have unreliable salespeople tippy-tapping into their CRM systems, and I want to know what those salespeople are doing. Instead, they're going having lunches or they're doing whatever they're doing. And so I have a dashboard. I have my gauge to show me what their productivity is. Well, what happens when your agentic AI is talking to the customer proactively at any time that they want, that is aligning to their values, that has read their websites, that knows their employment history, and knows all these things at the same time? So again, we're missing opportunities when it comes to productivity within the organization. When we think about like the frontline approaches and what the data suggests is that, again, it's very surface level when it comes to what the awareness and understanding of the Australian business owner has. It's, well, AI can do some marketing for me. AI can do customer support. AI can do operations and logistics. All those things you have probably read on a TechCrunch headline or on AFR. So really what it suggests to me is that there's really a surface level understanding of how AI actually works within organizations because they're going towards the more practical things. AI works on invisible tasks within the organization and it works on productivity. Those are the best applications of AI in my view when it comes to putting in agentic AI in your organization. But again, finance, human resources, product services development, and sales trail as compared to the more classic marketing ones. So but when you think about your cost profile of your organization, a good chunk of it sits down there, right? But also think about the growth of your company. If you're a small business, you're likely the CFO and your FP&A and your accounts payable and your payroll. But as companies grow from 1 person to 10 people to 20 people to 50 people, there's usually cohort growth in costs, right? As you go from 20 to 50 people, you need to grow your finance team. You need an FP&A, you need to run payroll, et cetera, et cetera. These are opportunities that AI can start to support so that you can shape your organization in a different way, to have more frontline workers, to have more people to have human-to-human interactions. So there's a real opportunity that I think today is missed in terms of the understanding of small businesses. Now, and again, that points to the awareness is high. Yes, I understand what AI is. It's fantastic. But I really don't know how to put it, how to use it, right? 68, 7 out of 10 people, when asked, do you agree or strongly agree that your organization knows which AI capabilities and where to implement? They think yes, 70%. And their leadership team, they have belief that their leadership team can implement it. But in their confidence level, It's 40%. Now, interestingly, when you look deeper into the data, and John and I will discuss this today, when you look at older people like me, yes, I know how to do that. When you ask Generation Z, they're just like, I don't think so, right? Because they're more native tool users. And what's interesting about native tools is we asked the question, when it comes to AI, what are you actually using? Because we thought that was a good question to ask in terms of, how sophisticated are you? More than 70% of all people who are just using ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude. That's really what people are using. That is what our nation is doing. So going back to that statement I said before is, we are at risk of being AI consumers as opposed to AI creators. This suggests that today. We didn't ask the question of how many paid accounts, which would be also an interesting one, but maybe for next run on our index. But again, there's really a surface level understanding of artificial intelligence and usage of the tools that are available. Up top here, that's where the power is in your organization. That's where you can unlock some of this remarkable intelligence that exists in artificial intelligence. And that points to where the world is today. Now, I don't think Australia is alone, so I just want to put it out there, but there are others who are far ahead. And what history has taught us, especially when it comes to technology, first mover advantage is a significant advantage and points to global domination in the sector. The world is in what's called model native AI. So that is AI in businesses, which kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it. We're trying to jam this remarkable intelligence into our organic organizations. We are extremely fallible. We do not have perfect memory, et cetera, et cetera. So what you get is you get AI as a service, or AaaS, as we call it here in Cider, but you get tons of vertical point solutions that are finely tuned. Now, I also want to point out about these point solutions and the hidden costs that exist into them. I'd like you to go into ChatGPT as a little task after this, and I'd like you to then go in and put a prompt in 5 times in a row, 5 different chats. What do you get? 5 different results, yes? In business, what do you need? You need consistency. In production, you need 99.9% reliability. If you have 95% reliability of your generative AI, after 20 tasks, that's a 36% reliability rate. So that means it doesn't take that many tasks in a customer service inquiry. But are you going to put it in generative AI into your business if only 4 out of 10 responses are correct? Of course not. You're not going to do that. And so that's the one problem that faces these point solutions which sit into the generative AI or AI agent space. But the second thing is, everyone remember 10 years ago, the cost of Ubers? They were cheap. It was great. Yeah? Do you know why they were cheap? Because they were subsidized by venture capital money. To what? Get us to download the Uber app. Get us to build the behavior. We are fooling ourselves if we think that the cost of a token of ChatGPT is its true cost. I can tell you it is not. ChatGPT made $5 billion last year from user accounts. It spent $10 billion. So the true cost of token economics is higher, much, much higher. So where we're moving to is what's called system native AI or horizontal AI. And that is AI first. So let's build this AI. Just like when online came on, I'm sure it happened actually, but when online came on, you don't take your computer terminal and put it into David Jones and have people shop online. That's not how you use it. That's how we're thinking. That's an allegory for how we're using it today. We're trying to jam this thing, which is not human, into human businesses. And so you want to think about AI as infrastructure. And it's the system of record or horizontal data where humans become contributors. We provide the je ne sais quoi. We provide the joie la vie. We provide taste, tact, knowledge, timing, and another T that I forget. But the important part is you get high repeatability when you have AI as infrastructure. You have high explainability, which is really important. And you have that auditing trail, which becomes really important in businesses. Come on, let's go. Here we go. It's clear, and again, you'll see a common thread kind of go through, is that when you asked about a strategy of these businesses, so if you think back to the slides before, 7 out of 10 people think that leadership has an idea about how to use AI, but less than 40% have the confidence to do it. But when you start asking about the strategy and the roadmap, the actual work to be done to try and implement AI, is people are still kind of experimenting. And in my view, as we looked at the previous data before, it's a consequence of the surface level understanding about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for a decade, by the way. It's not something new. So there is not really a big excuse for how to start using this technology. It's really gotten into our hands. I mean, November 2022 is a long time ago, if you think about technology cycles, right? That's when ChatGPT first launched. So, less than 20%, 25%, 1 in 4 have a clear strategy. 8% are nowhere. But the vast majority are still experimenting and exploring options on it. Talking about generative AI versus agentic AI, hopefully I've given you some ideas about the differences between the two. Is that, again, as a consequence of tool usage mainly and understanding, is most people are using generative AI, and this reflects that tool stack that I showed you before. But there's only a small percentage of organizations that are even starting to experiment with agentic AI. Now, to be fair, it's relatively new and what is being talked about. But the takeaway is like leap over generative AI into agentic AI, because your gains will be higher and you have less cost and less uncoupling. But the scary part is only 1% of businesses are actually attributing value to agentic AI activities. Now remember, agentic AI can be across your business. It can generate images, it can do mapping, it can approve documents, it can process tasks, it can do a lot of different things. But we're only really just starting at the starting line when it comes to implementing this technology. And getting into, one more. I think John and the team at Nature did a fantastic analysis of the business industry in Australia and putting them into 4 segments of readiness. So we have trailblazers, which have high urgency and low difficulty, white knucklers, who have high urgency and high difficulty, tinkerers, who have low urgency and high difficulty, and good old sleepwalkers, yes, who have low urgency and low difficulty. They're still asking ChatGPT for recipes, right, at the moment. But interestingly, there's a pretty even distribution of these companies across the nation. And when we start to kind of look at the cohorts of them by size, is you're really starting to see, it's a fairly even distribution of those companies. But really, it's these companies here who are, in my view, are probably the best poised to start adopting agentic AI if they can leap across some of the current understanding levels that they have as a cohort. We'll get into a little bit deeper conversation with John today about that. And I think that's probably enough for me to be talking. We'll leave it to the experts to give deeper commentary in a moment. But the way that we think about productivity in this nation is it's in 4 stages. You have individual productivity, team productivity, organizational productivity, and then sovereign productivity. And it's very clear that Australia is still in this individual productivity, which is probably it's not unreasonable to think that why productivity gains has not been reflected into our national conversation and our national outputs. And if we keep going this way, it'll be a while before we start to see the productivity, which has been flat for 20 years, start to creep up. But clearly, if you're going to be moving into from a business, if you're business owners or you work in businesses, to get to organizational productivity, to realize the efficiency and productivity gains of agentic AI, you need to start thinking about a system of record, and you need to start thinking about agentic AI, and not to be dazzled by the generative AI capabilities of creating cool images to writing cool stuff. That's all surface level. So with that, I'll invite John to come up, and we'll have a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the data. Thanks, John, for joining us. Now, John is the director of Nature Research. John's been in the market research industry for 25 years, looking at your profile, and has worked in Europe and the UK. Nature's been a great partner of Decider. If you do want an independent study conducted or great advice, please reach out to John today. But John, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
We've got some of the stats on the board here. I think maybe the the first question would be, it was quite a comprehensive study that we did. Yeah, we actually added an additional round for it. But from the data that you gathered, for you, like in your experience view, like what stood out most when it came to like the sovereign readiness of this country?
Look, there's a lot that did jump out. I think if there's one thing that we went into this piece suspecting, but still we're a bit surprised about the kind of delta in the data, it was around that efficiency piece. So this slide that you spoke to up here, we've done a lot of work with businesses of all different sizes, micro businesses all the way up to the more enterprise level. Whenever you ask those businesses why they choose what they choose, why they use what they use, efficiency is always going to come through as one of the top three drivers. But you rarely see such a big gap between efficiency and everything else. So for me, that did jump out as a surprise. It jumps out as many businesses, as you spoke to a great level of depth and detail, just don't know what they're doing yet. They know they want to get to that particular point, but they don't know what that value add is going to be for their business. And we do know increasingly over the last couple of years in a more strained cost of living and cost of business environment, more and more businesses do have that even more increased focus on efficiency. This screams out to me, though, there's an opportunity to enlighten, to educate, to start showing use cases and examples of how this emerging technology can help add value to their businesses.
Once you started looking underneath the data, as you start to like cut it, or what's called a crosstab in the market research, is once you start to crosstab the data, is when you start to look at industry, if you look at industry size, if you look at kind of the generational cohorts, even gender, was there anything that popped out that you thought was interesting?
A couple of things. I'll start with the bit that was less nuanced. That efficiency piece pretty much pervades all different company sizes and industry sectors. When you start to dig below that, though, there is some nuance that does come through. Surprise, surprise. At an industry level, little difference other than those businesses that self-identify as being in the tech space. So they will, as you would expect, identify themselves as being more comfortable, more confident in some where they're going to. But that's the exception to the rule. Every other business, in terms of the industries that we covered, relatively even and uniform in terms of their comfort and level of sophistication. Where we did see perhaps more differentiation was, I guess it's a bit of an age and tenure dynamic. So the older decision makers in businesses and those with longer tenures within those businesses, the 15, 20-year plus veterans, the ones perhaps with the more strategic imperative to invest in AI, but with the less hands-on experience and the less and kind of bigger gaps in their confidence in terms of where it's going to take them to. On the flip side of that, as you might expect, the younger decision makers, and we're not talking fresh out of university, but in those kind of mid to late 20s into early 30s, and those with, I guess, less entrenched tenures within their businesses, the kind of 6 to 10 year, where they're still kind of in significant positions of influence within those businesses, but perhaps less entrenched with the way that those businesses have operated in the past. They are more hands-on involved, more experienced, yes, albeit with ChatGPT more than anything else, but the more engaged and engaging in the AI space. So believing goes hand in hand with that. They believe they have greater confidence and clarity in terms of where they'd like to get to.
It's really interesting because, that cohort of people are, let's call them emerging leaders, and they still sit on top, at the end of the day, there's boards, there's the senior leadership team. As you started looking underneath the data, was there any particular industry that you saw that had more of a, pointing to this one, in terms of strategy clarity?
Strategy people.
Yeah.
Not as much of a difference jumped out there. So again, as I mentioned before, those businesses within the tech or tech adjacent space, perhaps, yes. But the shape of this data was relatively consistent across industry types. Kind of took me back. I think the closest equivalent I've seen was probably going way back, maybe about 15 years or so ago, when small to medium and larger businesses moving and migrating everything to the cloud. I think there was perhaps a similar shape of data and similar questions we'd captured back then. They got over that hurdle, that hump a little bit quicker, I feel, than these businesses.
Yeah. Interesting. And what about gender differences? That's always something that pops up in studies that I've done before.
Yes, yeah. And look, there's always a difference between claimed and actual behavior, particularly when it comes down to gender skews and differences. You can talk about any sector and the stereotype tends to apply, and it has applied to a certain extent here. Male respondents would talk about at least believing they have greater experience and authority and confidence around this space.
Surprise.
Whether that actually turns out to be the case, we can all debate.
Okay. We won't check testosterone levels in the next study. That's awesome, John. Thank you. What we might do is maybe open it up to the floor for a couple brief questions. We have a few more things to talk about. The rainbow's out behind us, which is excellent. And then we'll open up to more kind of, if you have specific questions to ask John or I. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. So if we're at a stage where we're looking at agents-driven business and trying to launch in that space, how do you future-proof? Because there's obviously something else beyond agent AI and agentic. Where do you draw the line and say, well, okay, we can go so far, but then we need to future-proof the business for the next stage?
Yeah. So kind of two comments to that question. One is like there's still a really important model that has yet to be developed, which is a large quantitative model. So that's one of the big things that's holding back. But I think it's debatable what artificial general intelligence is. I think there's lots of different views of what that is, but we're still a while away. So I want to kind of point that out. I think we're years away from this kind of sci-fi AGI being applied to everybody. When it comes to the next evolution or revolution of technology that comes out, what AI fundamentally is, it's a horizontal technology. So preparing your business to have solid and high fidelity data is the future-proofing activity. It always has been, right? Since the late 90s, actually even earlier that, since the late 80s of having good 60s, having good data in your organization has always been a bellwether for a successful organization. That really hasn't changed. What AI will allow us to do is to expand the reach, to go towards personalization at an inhuman rate to find those customers, those products, those experiences that you're looking to deliver, a value that you're looking to deliver to your organization. So I think for the next technology, whatever that may be, having a good data foundation will future-proof you. Yes. Yes.
Well, you must have started job losses. What have you got from the USA?
From the US? Yeah.
Job losses, because I got an email, a message from Google saying Salesforce is going to reduce their staff by 10,000. So you must have data in terms of how affects employees.
Yeah. So this study is Australia only. It's interesting whether or not we're going to launch it, but I can tell you that the comment that I made before about graduate jobs starting to disappear. It is definitely happening in the United States. They're seeing a definite trend of that happening. I caught up with the head of the Harvard Alumni Association when I was over there, and there are even people who are from the Crimson Tide who are having difficulty in finding jobs now because they're being whittled away. I reviewed the latest jobs report from the U.S. and it's not showing it yet. I mean, the U.S. economy is in a weird place because of lots of different things. But I think what we'll start to see is the inevitable kind of change in those organizations. We are definitely seeing it in the tech organizations. When you hear Microsoft, I can confirm, I have ex-staff who work in these organizations. There are these essentially Magnificent Seven. If you are in those companies, whether or not you're a designer or a janitor, they're like, you are an AI janitor and you are an AI designer. And they go, oh, okay, I guess I am. So they are hard pivoting towards being AI first companies in their organizations. So, I can, from the people that I've spoken to, some of those strong statements that have been put out by the CEOs of these companies, they are absolutely true. So you can look at them as a leading indicator for likely what will happen over the next, 5 to 7 years across the U.S. economy. Yes.
That makes you a comment about funding.
Yeah.
And I take it that you guys are funded. From a profitability perspective, I don't think the data talks about whether or not people are finding return on investment in their investments into AI.
Yeah.
And from a go-to-market strategy, how do you think people can talk to the market in terms of how you get a return?
Yeah. So our study, as hopefully you have seen, is like where Australia is at the very early point of actually implementing AI. So perhaps in future rounds of this study, we'll add that in terms of, are you getting an ROI? So I can't speak to the specific study data. Anecdotally, what we're working with our customers and from the networks that I have is like, it's still very early days for businesses to be able to get ROI out of this technology. We're shifting from generative to agentic, so there's a big shift happening. But what's happening at the enterprise level is they are definitely moving to system native AI. They are custom builds inside their organizations. And the larger the organization, the more likely they are to not use point solutions, because they are realizing that those two problems of consistency and quadratic cost increases with using just kind of plug and play generative AI.
So, having worked in the UK and the US, completely different mindset to investing. And one of the challenges in the Australian market is getting people to think ahead of where we are now to spend the money.
Yes.
Because I totally concur. When I was in San Francisco, maybe a year and a half ago, they were talking about agentic then. And the big thing they were talking about was building employee-less companies. So that is kind of what I understand is where we are going from a mindset perspective. So I think it's important in terms of interacting with the market to understand that.
Yeah, certainly. And that revenue per employee, that will likely be the most important metric that's kind of thrown out by VCs or asked by VCs into startups. I like to use the example of Midjourney. So Midjourney is a large vision model that's created. So just like ChatGPT, it can design an image for you. It's been around for a few years. It did 250 million in annual revenue, and it's grown a few employees, but it had 20 employees in that organization. And so I don't know if they're employee less, but one employee or few, and having an army of agentic apps in the language that we use, working through the baloney, right, which is the administration part, but then the exciting part of the productivity. Like what people don't realize is like there's been incredible information asymmetry in this world for 25 years. All of you have a CRM system, yeah? Some of you have me in your CRM system. The copy of me is different in every single one of them, right? Fidelity is variable. In the future, there will be one of me, right? And other AI organizations, some powered by Decider, will access that information. So we're about to move into essentially information symmetry, which AI can do because it is limitless in its it's always on. It has unlimited capacity. Yes.
What opportunities opens up for SMEs? Because traditionally these life-changing innovations have mostly benefited some enterprise companies. What do you think the opportunity is, and how do you SMEs best get exposed to that?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's really exciting.
Can you repeat it? I didn't hear it. Sorry, my hearing's bad.
Yeah, the question was, what advantages can SMEs take from this? Because classically, enterprises have been the first and reap the most value out of new technologies. So for me, SMEs, like this is we're literally at the starting line where everybody can have access to this technology. These generative AI tools are like electricity, just like it was 100 years ago, except we have a distribution platform. Going to my opening slide of the different layers, that all exists today. So distribution exists today. Access exists today. And so SMEs, I think, should be looking towards productivity. Like AI can go find you customers who share the values that you do as a business owner, right? It can find it 24 hours a day. It can work for you. It can work at an inhuman rate to be able to find that match, right, for you. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for small businesses to, really simply put, like find more customers and do less baloney to process those customers.
If I could add to that, the third driver here for AI is making better decisions using data. Well, we've done hundreds of projects with small business owners and decision makers for their credit cards, their business management platforms, their accounting software, all of the tools and services that they use. That number 3 driver here, that distant third driver, is usually 1 or 2 in all of those spaces. What's the benefit you get from this thing or this better version of this thing? It's about helping me save time and make a better decision quicker to give me that competitive advantage. Yes, what I've just said there will apply to bigger businesses too, but it's especially keenly felt almost on an emotional level for small business decision makers.
I have a couple observations, but I have a couple questions, so I'll try to make them fast. Observationally, I've been in this space since 1980. First AI course, 86.
Cool.
This issue of data, inconsistency has been around since the 80s and even earlier. I think the bell curve here, the adoption curve, is very similar to any other technology. I think one of the things that's different is you see a lot of that experimenting and exploring options. one of the clear messages from the AI community is AI deployment is different. You don't sit around and create a strategy, you start experimenting.
Vibe coding,
Lean,
yes.
exactly. So I think part of that is because of that. I think the other thing as well is because, the Gen AI stuff has sort of popped into the, consciousness. It's the easiest place for people to experiment because individuals can do it. You don't really need the board to approve it. Everybody's like, well, let me just, load it up. So those are some of my observations. I think that my question though is, right now, where would you say the maturity is? If I'm an SME right now and I want to get rid of my tech stack and all those silos. By the way, I think one of the issues is what we're doing globally is just, instead of taking advantage of the opportunity of AI to actually design properly optimized, the value delivery systems, what we're doing is copying what we did in the industrial age, which has been outdated for 40 years now, and we're just copying it in the AI age. So you end up seeing the vertical agentic space right now is literally a copy of the org charts.
Yes.
That are actually vertical silos that have not worked for the 50 years.
Yes.
So, what I want to know is, for any business to basically go, let me throw away all my SaaS platforms.
Yes.
And start afresh with the proper architecture, which by the way, I think you guys have the proper architecture. What's the maturity level? Can I actually do that today? Who else is in this space? How much is this going to change? Because I think that's what affects people's strategic rollout, is when should I come in and what can I actually start transitioning to? And how do I transition my crappy data in all my siloed systems into something cohesive?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was long, but.
No, I love it. So there's two parts to the answer I'm going to give you. So maturity level is low, right? So I think there's clear evidence there.
Like from a solution perspective.
Sure. What our take is on it is your observation is exactly like we're trying to jam this different technology into a very human system, right? Into an org chart. That is not the way to do it. What our take is to actually create an AI parallel of your business. So what do you need? You need your aspirations, you need your values, right? You need your cash, your business model. That's it, right? And just like if you're to launch a new website, right? What do? You create your new website and you push 5% of traffic to it to make sure that it works properly. The same thing we believe is what businesses should do. They should keep their business running, get that moving, but then start fresh and start new, because you're exactly right. We are trying to put this new and different technology in an old factory. And so we need to rebuild the factory in its entirety. And that comes with essentially everything except for the very human things that sit on it. And so, there's amazing agentic capabilities to go out. There's, the amazing amount of data that's just publicly available that you can use. I think what most businesses, you don't need that crutch of historical data, like what we find with our system.
Data to do this.
Yeah. You don't need that. Or I have my data and it's so valuable, right? There's those contrasting kind of views. What we find in our system is you just need your old data to seed the system. It just needs a little bit, and it will go out and create far better data than you've created that you would have created, that humans would have put together. Yes. So that's the asymmetry that I was talking about before.
Oh, sorry.
Can I say, I'll pull the work at the side. I'll try and cross two questions, because two questions actually merge into one. None of us in this room can beat the best computer software that plays chess. None of us in this room. It's already better than all of us. But for some reason, every news article you read is talking about how it's now smarter than the smartest PhD, this one medical field or this one scientific model. That means everybody is below that. So if I said, and I try to answer your question in an honest way, it's now August 25. Things are obviously moving quickly.
Yeah.
We're talking about making data. So you've got data from your systems, your CRM system and everything else. There's a little bit of value in that, mostly to seed and move, say, your customers across. But that might be an average of, say, 5 fields on average.
Yeah,
Then you now apply a workforce that would normally be unimaginable in a small business. And you say, that workforce is so specialized and so good at what it does, it's now focused at the field level.
Yeah.
It just goes and does one field at a time. But to do one field, it might ask 20 questions. And it does that for everything.
Yeah.
So that means it's remaking your data. Now, coming back to the best of the best. If you're a small business or a large business, and you aren't focused on becoming the best of the best, exactly the same that happened in software. So there's only 4 or 5, maybe an oligopoly in most markets. That's what's going to happen in every single.
yeah, well, that's been happening since the
If
beginning.
you can
of-
install it, just install it.
Yeah.
The best chess player versus you're going to go hire a person that plays chess. That's just not going to happen. So you have to get started now and say the most important thing is this is exactly different to any other time in history, because I went through the internet, 1.0
Same.
and reimagined the way that quantitative data could be collected, knowledge out of people's heads.
Yep.
Tacit knowledge, things that you just couldn't put your hands up, but now you can now quantify it and put it on charts like that at scale, like really big scale. Now, if you took that and said, everything is going to be productized, it's knowledge work today, but not productized to the point of write me an essay. It goes to what David said. Point to where the aspiration is. Who has the biggest aspirations will win. So the thing that limits most small businesses is the fact that the word small is in their title.
That's fair.
You have to take that out, then you have to think big, because everybody can think big.
Well, basically, what we're doing is removing a labor constraint that made small, the definition of small business is actually by employees.
100%.
Yeah.
So if I had 10,000 people in the corner,
Mm,
how am I going to deploy it?
yeah,
That's exactly what it is. The cents per hour
yeah,
at the level of the highest of the high. And then just replaces out. And so you make your own data very quickly. So how quickly you're going to make your own data? So now let's go to August 27.
mm,
If you haven't started now,
I get it.
there is no August 27.
Mm,
There's no early, anything past early adoption. There is no other adoption.
yeah, so your point is, the earlier you start letting the system.
Building your own
collect its data,
The earlier you start
yeah,
on that one specialized
then
thing,
you become even more, you
Then
become
become-
smart.
you become the best at that.
Yeah.
Because that's now about data, like you said.
Yeah,
Gotta
yeah.
Collect that much data, and it's got to be built from becoming the best.
Yeah.
By playing everybody else.
Yeah.
And being completely superior, just in that one thing. And there's a lot of those one things, by the way. There could be millions of them, by the way. Like, I don't know how many there are. Probably multiply the number of products in the world by 5 or 6, right? Like, there's that much of the knowledge work that sits, as David said, in asymmetry in people's heads. That is just now going to be somebody's specialized product that will.
Yeah, I think from a macroeconomic point of view, the question is, are we gonna be 8 billion cottage industry people, or are we gonna be one company?
Well, if everyone's got the power of big tech and AI and they can have it themselves, I think nobody knows, but I think I'm more optimistic than not. Because
That would be the 8
because
billion, not the
no
one.
one's left behind when
Mm.
everyone's got the same capability. It's just now how you decide to discover the process. It's scientific. You've got to discover what that one thing is.
So you welcome to an internal discussion at Decider. We have these discussions all the time. No, it's very cool. What we might do is maybe ask one more question from the audience, and then we'll close up. And I've just got a few things to take. Yes.
I think we got a message around productivity and data sovereignty.
Yes.
From this, if you look at this kind of a word cloud, I didn't see anything around consent or privacy, which I think most people have seen the Productivity Commissioner's report recently around relaxing rules around privacy and consent when it comes to AI. Did you look into the awareness of privacy to any of these kind of SMEs? Did they understand their sovereign privacy consent?
Only to a very certain extent, and I think it'll be a topic to explore in future waves of this piece. Security and risk and compliance was noted as a barrier to consideration or adoption, but very low down that ladder. Like, again, going back to other sectors and categories we work in, security compliance pretty much top of mind when it comes to risk mitigation. In this space, again, I think it ladders back to the majority of these businesses don't know the essentially ins and outs of what this is going to plug into and what it's going to take out of their businesses. Hence, it's an underlying concern that even in itself hasn't been fully formed.
This is my world I live in, obviously. But I look at what you were saying earlier on around Uber subsidizing early days. You've also got to consider foreign nations that own certain products that collect data that are also subsidized as well, which impact productivity here. And I think that's an area SMEs don't quite realize yet. If they're using these foreign tools, they're actually giving away or throwing away the baby with the bathwater, because they're giving that insight. I mean, if we look at D as an example, it will always be more cost effective. They'll always pay their drivers better because it's owned by a Chinese firm. So it's just considering that aspect and how SMEs understand that, I think, is a really interesting piece for me to understand.
Certainly, like as we were going through this exercise, you know, when we were drafting the initial study, like all these things will start to come up, and we're really excited to run this index on a regular basis. So we'll consistently add modules to
sectors as well. That would be really interesting for me. You've got sector-based. What they do.
We can come back to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. All right, we have a few more. So just a few more things. I wanted to give you a view of. It's free to come, but you've now got to sit for the sales pitch for 10 seconds. Okay. I wanted to give you a view of what agentic AI actually is. Okay. So you've all experienced generative AI. Okay. So the background here is this is one of our customers. That's a beauty company. It does around $1.7 million a year as a business. And it is a specialty beauty company. Now, we implemented the Decider operating system in this company. It is a horizontal platform. We connected in its Shopify account, its Xero account, its Klaviyo account, it's a 3PL account, its Google Analytics account, its accounts, right? It's SaaS software. And without prompt engineering, we gave this sales app, which is called Ava on the site, we gave it the goal to increase revenue by 20% over 12 months' time. That's the only instruction we gave this particular agent. Because when people go online and chat to these things, everyone's a jerk. So I was a big jerk to this thing. So I don't give it my name. And I start asking it some really abstract questions. Now, remember, its goal is to grow revenue, right? And I say, what is your best product? That is a very hard question to ask a database, right? What is it? What is your best product? So first of all, see how quickly this responds. No, there's no human that have written any of these responses. You can ask this in Portuguese if you'd like. I then ask the next question is, what is your cheapest product? I ask, why is it cheap? And it has incredibly nuanced responses in this agent. As it starts to go through, I ask it, how does this compare to Nivea products? Because it has a goal, because it is agentic, it is creating other agents that are going out onto the web. It is slurped in all of the Nivea content and all the product content. And because this is a specialty business, Nivea is going, and Nivea, its response is very nuanced. It goes quickly, but it says Nivea is a generalist company. It serves a wide range of customers and it has chemicals in its products. It doesn't shit on Nivea. It simply gives a balanced view. Now, as this goes through, I continue to be a jerk to this thing. I tell it I'm allergic to turmeric, which is something I've learned about. Not that I'm allergic to it, but I've learned about turmeric and putting it on your skin instead of just in your mouth. But the key thing here is that this, after 8 weeks, grew incremental revenue for this business by just under 5%. And after 12 weeks, it grew incremental revenue by almost 10%. It has 100% higher order rate than if you just go online. It is tremendously more powerful and more potent. So that's a good example of this productivity opportunity that it exists. And this is one tiny little thing that's on your website. Right? So imagine as you start to implement these apps across your organization, and as Paul said, what we are about to get into is you can install the best that the world has to offer. You will install the best strategy from Jim Collins. You will install the best accounting, right? From, let's say PwC, maybe not. Maybe, they're accountants, and maybe, yeah, the lowest tax you're gonna pay with PwC. You'll be able to install all of these things into your organization, right? The best that the world has to offer. And that's the opportunity. So the cottage industry one, we can have a discussion about that, or the sovereign capability. Now, as contrasted to Sephora, to Mecca, to Duraleak, and to the other companies which are AI agents, they all bork after the first question, which is what is your best product? Because they are task-based agents, right? As soon as you go off the task, they bork. Decider operating system. We've talked a little bit about it. We're launching it in beta on October 1st. You can reserve your spot in line. I'll get the QR code in just a moment. And one of the amazing things, and you'll see here in the Decider system, is that this is the power of an agentic system. The only thing you need to put into our system when you're onboarding is your company URL. Our system will go out, it will consume all the publicly available information about your business, and it starts to build the executive functions for your company. If you're a doctor's practice, you have patients, you don't have clients, right? If you have clients instead of customers, it will start to configure your navigation based on what your business is. It will start to inform those. They are agentic, they have goals. Your marketing function is to market to customers. Your sales function is to convert customers. Now, as you start to go through this, you start activating and simply adding and integrating your common SaaS tools, and it seeds the platform, and it starts to build an agentically managed database for your company that is always on, that is always improving, right? That is working towards your goals, whatever they may be, right? To achieve your aspirations. So this is launching in October. And the question starts to come up is, well, as Paul said, if you have the equivalent of 10,000 employees at your fingertips, where would you invest? And let's not forget, like, we have literally been buying intelligence for years. Before AI, there was SaaS. We are literally buying the intelligence of the people in Salesforce. Building software used to be really expensive, right? BPOs, right? These are all things that we're literally buying their intelligence at a lower rate. So this is another one. So as you start to think about this, our take is really simple: front office, middle office, and back office. And as you start to look through these organizations, come on, here we go. Let's get us there. Really, it's just about looking for those hidden tasks within your organization that will drive efficiency, but more importantly, like I showed you, the productivity opportunity. So as you can see here, you can reserve your spot in our OS beta launch. It's coming October 1st. It's $99. I want to point it out and kind of rewind back 35 years. When the internet, talking about layers, was created, there was these things called domains that you used to be able to buy. The proportion of people who bought domains in the early days, pets.com, carsales.com.au, cars.com, they own a lot of boats right now. There is businesses who were created just to buy domains. We are literally entering that. And this is your opportunity for $99 to claim your product variant within this new agentic ecosystem. So the joke is it was free to get in. It's $99 to leave this office if you'd like. They're waiting with iPads and NFC taps on your way out. But I would really encourage you it's $99. It means nothing. That's like 3 coffees in Australia. To reserve your spot, and you get 50% off for the first year of the platform. It is built on cost efficiency for your organization.